Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the SIL Legal Lounge podcast, Let's Talk Law, a show where we talk about different areas of law and policy in a frank and easy to understand manner so that everyone can end up learning something new. Our topic for today is the recriminalization of attempted suicide, and that is something which everyone has thoughts about. Everybody wants to know what exactly is happening and what it entails for the future. My name is Nida Tareen, and I am the principal and co founder of the School of International Law, a recognized teaching center for the University of London LLB Honours Program. My guest for today is someone who I believe can answer all these questions for us. Barrister Mumtaz Ali is an advocate Supreme Court and managing partner of the law firm Mumtaz and Rohi. He is also a constitutional expert practicing in Islamabad for more than 20 years, and he has also remained as additional advocate general in the Supreme Court. The reason why I have invited him on today's episode is because he has recently filed a petition in the Supreme Court on behalf of Pakistan Psychiatric Society challenging the judgment of the Federal Shariat Court, which has now set aside the Criminal Amendment Act of 2022, where the attempt to suicide was decriminalized. Assalamu alaikum, Mumtaz, and thank you so much for being here.
Walaikum assalam, and thank you very much for inviting me and for giving such a illustrious introduction about myself. So I'm here. You can ask any questions you want. जी.
All right, तो the simple question सबसे पहले ये है कि पहले आप हमें बता दें कि why did Pakistan decriminalize attempted suicide in 2022 and what has now led to its recriminalization now in 2026?
So basically, what happened is that in our Pakistan Penal Code, there was a provision called Section 325, which criminalized an attempt to suicide. It was a very medieval, very old provision which was introduced by the British in the Indian Penal Code somewhere in 1860. And at that point in time, a lot of countries around the world had criminalized an attempt to suicide because of religious reasons, because of social reasons. But over the period of time, in the last 50 or 60 or 100 years, a lot of countries have now started to decriminalize an attempt to suicide. And for the reason that now there is a greater appreciation and understanding that a person who is going to commit a suicide is not a normal person. He's suffering from some sort of depression or some sort of mental illness, and hence he should not be criminalized. He should not be punished for such an act. So a lot of countries have moved towards that direction, and Pakistan also, there were growing voices by the civil society and some other doctors, and especially this Pakistan Psychiatric Society had been somewhat using its influence to decriminalize it. And hence, a bill was then introduced in the parliament, in the Senate, and that bill was passed, and the section 325 was removed from our PPC. So once this was done, some petitions were filed in the Federal Shariat Court, and you very well know, and all the students must be knowing that Federal Shariat Court is there in Pakistan to declare if any law is against the injunctions of Islam. So two petitions were filed in the Federal Shariat Court in which the petitioners basically alleged that this removal of Section 325 is against the injunctions of Islam. And then FST gave a very detailed judgment, basically agreeing to their stance and setting aside the Criminal Amendment Act of 2022. Now, what were the reasons of Federal Shariat Court? There were a variety of reasons, but very briefly, let me just go through them. Number one, the Federal Shariat Court said that committing suicide in Islam is a big sin. It's a major sin. And if something is a sin in Islam, then since we live in sort of an Islamic country, there has to be a law to punish people who try to attempt committing that sin. So this was the basic premise of the Federal Shariat Court judgment.
All right, but Mumtaz, can you just tell me, and for the viewers as well who are watching, because again, this is not just being watched by people who understand the legal system completely. It's being watched by a lot of people जिनको law का इतना नहीं पता होगा. Punishment क्या थी? So if you were basically found guilty under this, तो आपकी क्या penalty थी?
The penalty was not very big. It was fine or imprisonment for a very small couple of years. Punishment में fine भी था and alternate में imprisonment भी थी. But the problem is that if someone attempts to commit a suicide and you go to a hospital to treat the person, let's suppose एक आदमी कुछ cyanide पी लेता है या कुछ और medicine पी लेता है या for example he jumps from somewhere or he tries to hang himself and he survives and someone then takes him to the hospital then refuses to treat the person because the hospital says that you first have to go to the police because it's a police case now. And then the whole process of prosecution then starts. Then police registers an FIR against
Will
the
the patient
person,
survive
and
that
then
long? That's my question.
that's the whole question. So, coming back to your first question, that what is the punishment? Punishment is not very grave, for instance, but the whole criminal machinery gets activated. And the person who is attempting to commit suicide, instead of him getting some sort of help, a mental health help in the hospital or rehabilitation, he then walks on another slippery slope of the courts, of the police. So that's the major problem.
So, would you agree that this fear of prosecution and this fear of the police getting involved, this would, in the first place, discourage individuals from seeking medical help after a suicide attempt?
100%. Number one, the patient will not seek help, and number two, the families
They
who
won't
are
tell
there to
anyone.
they won't tell anyone because there is a huge stigma attached to it. Because in one case, everyone the family will find out that he or she tried to commit a suicide, and now this is happening. So there's a huge stigma attached, and according to a lot of statistics and research by the World Health Organization and other countries, they have come to the conclusion that decriminalizing it is a better thing because if we keep it as an offense, people will not come and seek help from the hospitals or the doctors. So yeah, I agree with you 100% on this.
So this is what I was also going to come to next because I know, like I mentioned in your introduction, that you have filed a petition on behalf of the Pakistan Psychiatric Society. So obviously you have met with them, you have spoken to them, you have heard their concerns. What do mental health professionals say about criminalizing suicide attempts, in their words?
Well, they are psychiatrists and they are doctors and they take these things from medical point of view. So they believe that any person who is trying to commit suicide is not working, his mind is not working in a sane manner, so he needs a help, either it's psychological or psychiatric, he still needs help. So they are very much of the opinion that there is absolutely no need to criminalize it, and a lot of the countries in the world are moving away from criminalizing it. I think there are very less countries right now, probably some Muslim countries and some African countries left, which still keeps this as an offense. Otherwise, if we take an example of India or other Western countries or anywhere in the world, they have moved beyond this. And it's only because of the development in the medical science, in the field of psychiatric, in the field of psychology, where a lot of things are now treated as a medical disease. So they are very much vocal about it. And that is why they approached us. And now we have filed a petition. And I'm hearing that some other societies and NGOs are also interested in taking up this challenge to the Supreme Court because, as per my information, the federal government has not yet filed an appeal in the Supreme Court, as per my information. Although the Pakistan Psychiatric Society or anyone else was not a party in the federal Shariat court, it was just a petitioner who just filed a petition as a Muslim, as a citizen of Pakistan. And it was only the federal government, only the Ministry of Law, Ministry of Interior who were the party. So we were not heard. Pakistan Psychiatric Society could have been heard to get their views that what's the medicine behind it. But yeah, they are very vocal about it, and they think that this is a medical disease which needs to be treated.
Right. So then I have a very difficult question for you. And that is then, how do we reconcile the medical opinion with the opinions that people who have actually, pushed for this to be recriminalized? And you said that their opinions are based on religion. Am I correct?
Um, yeah, their
How do you
opinions are based
reconcile
on.
that? How do you reconcile religious
Okay.
opinions with medical opinions?
It can be reconciled. First of all, if you look at the history of any religion, I think major religions um, treat this attempt to suicide as a sin. It's a sin in Judaism. It's a sin in Hinduism. It's a sin in all other religions. So if we talk about religiously, it is a sin. But you have to keep in mind that anything which is a sin is not necessarily to be penalized by the state. There are a lot of other major sins in Islam as well. For example, backbiting is a sin. Now, backbiting is not penalized. So we can reconcile in this way that yes, under your religion, under the Islam, you should not commit a suicide. Life is the most precious thing one can have, and it's a gift from the God. And the Holy Quran, the Sunnah, and everyone in the Islamic Sharia has considered that this is a sin. But surprisingly, neither in the Quran or Sunnah or Islamic jurisprudence or any ijma, anywhere, it is it is agreed that this has to be penalized. So, I mean, you know that there are two types of punishment. One is had and one is tazir. Had is something in which the Quran itself says that if you commit this sin, you will be punished. And you must be knowing this that during the days of Ziyal Haq we have Hudud ordinance as well, in which the offences which were treated as had, they were then the state of Pakistan actually codified those laws. But then there are some offenses which come under the definition of tazir. In tazir, it is the state which has to decide whether to penalize something or not. So this sin of attempting to commit suicide comes it is treated as a tazir under the Islamic jurisprudence. So it is the Parliament of Pakistan which has given the trust by all the citizens and the Muslims that you make the laws. So under the definition of tazir, the Parliament can decide to penalize a sin or it can decide not to penalize a sin. So it is reconcilable. It is not that it is totally irreconcilable with Islam.
All right, so you've made a very good point about how this can be reconciled with religion. And I think we also need to remember that generally in Islam, compassion is supposed to
Exactly.
underline everything. So, obviously, as you have said, and I
Absolutely.
think all mental health experts have said the same thing as well, that somebody who is struggling with suicidal thoughts, somebody who has attempted suicide, they have a problem. They need help. And this is not something which needs to be punished, rather, this is something which needs additional support. So I think Islam, in that regard, would also stress on compassion rather than punishment in this matter.
Absolutely. I think you made a very good point. We all know that in our religion, rahmat and rahm is one of the most important aspects. And if someone is suffering, why to push him to more suffering? So I think you have a very good point. And plus, the Federal Shariat Court also then said a very interesting thing. They said that under Section 84 of the Pakistan Penal Code, any person who commits any offense, if he commits an offense and he doesn't have a sane mind, it is a defense. The Federal Shariat Court had basically said that since Section 84 of PPC is on the statute book, there is no need to remove Section 325. But the problem is that if someone commits an offense, he then have to defend and take a defense that I'm insane. You know, he still have to go through the whole prosecution and the machinery, and ultimately the court in the evidence then can give a finding that a person is insane to commit an offense. I
That's a
think
stigma as well.
exactly why to go through the whole process. So I think over here the federal Shariat court is reasoning is also wrong, and I've read the judgment of federal Shariat court. Although they have done quite hard work, it's a well drafted judgment, but there is a lot of weakness in their legal reasoning in the judgment. So yes, that's how it's about it.
Acha, so Mumtaz, let's just look at, the other side's point of view. I believe their goal generally is to reduce the rates of suicide. And probably that is why they decided to, put a penalty or a punishment. And as you just discussed, that's not a viable solution, right? So what else can be done to reduce suicide rates or to reduce this problem that we have? You might have heard recently, we've been hearing about a lot of young people committing suicide or attempting to commit suicide. So, what else can be done to actually achieve that goal rather than penalizing the ones who are already suffering from a mental condition?
Well, Nida, it's a very large issue because committing suicide usually is done by people who are under some sort of depression or distress, and it comes from family, it comes from money, it comes from even love affairs, it comes from poverty. So this is something which depends on the society at a large. I was just reading some statistics. I don't know how true they were, but it was mentioned. These statistics were mentioned in the reasoning that was given in the Senate Standing Committee for the decriminalization of the offense. It said that 79% of the attempted suicides were done by low income families. You know, more than 79%. That's a huge number. So this means that people who are struggling with finances or some other issue are more prone to commit the suicide. So as far as the question is concerned, how to help them, I think it's a very large question. It depends on our society. If a society is advanced, if you go to Scandinavian countries, if you go to happy countries, you will not find a lot of I believe the rate of suicide over there is quite low compared to low income countries having a lot of social and other type of issues. So number one, if our society does not progress financially, economically, and otherwise, these issues will remain over there. Number two, we need to have good psychological and psychiatric places where such people can be treated or rehabilitated in a very um, good environment, not in a hospital environment, in a good environment.
Where they
So
feel
I think
safe and heard and protected.
exactly. We keep on seeing that in US and UK and other places, they conduct sessions among people. You talk to other people who are going through different mental issues, who are going to different addictions or mental disorders. They sit around and they talk with each other. I don't believe that in Pakistan we have such kind of facilities. So we need to have more facilities. We need to sensitize the government, the NGOs,
And
and things
sorry to
like
cut
that.
you. You said we don't have these facilities, and I believe even if we do, they are for people who can actually afford them. They're not available for the general public. And as you
Yeah,
said, that this is a problem which
definitely.
is, it's prevalent in all sections and primarily with people who don't have the resources, as you mentioned.
I totally agree with you. And for that, I think we need to sensitize the governments to have this or at a government level. I understand that there are some places which are owned by private people, and people with money do go there, but the government needs to do some things for the local middle class, lower class. I think with the passage of time, and these things are being sensitized, and I hope and believe that in the coming future it will take shape. Just because of this judgment, I have seen that articles are been written in the newspaper by
Yeah.
students, by lawyers. Pakistan Psychiatric Society became sensitized about it. There is another society, they are thinking of filing, so people are now sensitized. So I'm hopeful, number one, that the Supreme Appellate Shariat Bench will have a more progressive attitude towards this issue compared to the Shariat court. This is my feeling. Let's see. And since now doctors are coming up as petitioners, maybe some other NGOs also come up, maybe the Supreme Appellate Bench points some amicus in this, and the issue might be decided in a much larger context. Just not just looking from one lens, but maybe looking at from other aspects as well. So I'm hopeful. Let's see what happens.
Inshallah. Well, whatever happens, I think one should hope that it is to the benefit of those who need help most. And that I think that is of prime concern over here, because you are already dealing with someone who is crying out for help. And rather than punishing them, one needs to look at other forms of rehabilitation or counseling, which could perhaps solve the issue. So I think this was very helpful, Mumtaz. And I had a whole bunch of questions, frankly, written down in front of me, but I didn't
Yes.
need to ask all of them because you covered all the material that I had in mind. But thank you so much for taking out time for this. This is a very important issue. Mental health is a concern. It is something that needs to be spoken about. And we are not mental health experts, but we are lawyers. And we are in a position where we can talk about the laws, at least, which affect mental health. So thank you once again. And thank you to everyone who was watching. And if you have any questions, please feel free to send them to us at info@sil.edu.pk, and I will make sure that Mumtaz answers them for us.
And I'll be available. Thank you very much, Nida, for inviting me. And I'll be available for any answers to any comments you people might have.
Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
thank you to everybody watching. Take care and Allah Hafiz.